So Games Workshop has made 10th edition codexes obsolete, confirming it today in a recent article. Let's talk about codex value and rules obsolescence, and maybe just a bit of criticism as to how Games Workshop seems to be still pushing these in other channels. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where over the past week or so we've been covering the rollout of Warhammer 10th edition, all the new details with models, lore and updates from Games Workshop. In today's video I thought we'd touch on Games Workshop's latest Warhammer 40k rules preview. I must admit this one is super light on any new details, and these articles feel like they're playing catch up on the info that they told us last week before we actually start to get new stuff. Perhaps the most interesting part of it is that Games Workshop seem to be confirming that their codexes are dead on one hand, while also trying to sell them to new players on the other hand, which I think is maybe a little bit unhelpful. Today they published an article saying what the new edition means for your books, what the new edition means for your codexes and supplements in Warhammer 40k. We basically already know that Games Workshop is replacing the codexes with new digital indexes with datasheets and a core rules section, and it seems that the article's mainly just to reiterate that, though they did have a couple of interesting other clarifications. They said that boarding patrols were written with 10th edition in mind, so everything in there should be fully compatible. I guess the changes to them were mainly for things like movement and line of sight and things, which could replace the rules in a 10th edition redo. Due to them still being working, Arcs of Omen Abaddon will actually remain on sale for the foreseeable future. That's at least mildly interesting, as often their supplement books tend to have a short shelf life. Here for a little bit while stocks last, then out of print and kind of hard to obtain for people who want to get hold of them. Otherwise, they talk a bit more about streamlining the game without losing any depth. Again, that perhaps seems a little bit unlikely to me. I feel like streamlining the game is probably positive, but realistically you're probably going to lose at least a bit of depth. It just seems unlikely that you're going to be able to hack out about 80% of the rules in the codex and still have the exact same depth of options and choices. Still though, overall I think most people are looking forward to a slimmed down version of 40k with a focus on maybe the more important stuff. Then basically the core of the article was basically telling people that their 9th edition codexes and data cards will be made obsolete by 10th edition, something that they do need to phrase kind of carefully considering how much codexes cost and the fact that a lot of people might well have bought them pretty recently. To be fair to them, it's definitely better to try and own up to it and to make sure as much of the community knows that message as possible so people don't go picking up codexes for a rules perspective and then being surprised by an update in 10th edition. I feel like they're handling it better than they might have done previously in Warhammer 40k, and announcing it maybe a little bit earlier does give them a little bit more credit, I think. As I mentioned though, it does conflict pretty hard with something else that they're posting, as we'll get onto, so it's not all a credibility win for Games Workshop in my opinion. They also reaffirm that the packs of data cards will be made obsolete, and it sounds like you might not even necessarily need non-unit data cards in your army setup. If all your codex's rules are going to be on one double-page spread of stratagems, relics, and core rules, that would eliminate the need for them for the most part. It sounds like you just have the core rules and any data cards for the units, as opposed to having stratagems and stuff. Finally, the only other bit of new information really was that their data card packs will be, in their words, inexpensive, and I feel like they're probably being accurate, at least by their own standards. Warhammer books and supporting things do tend to be pretty expensive in the first place, but at least by Games Workshop standards, the redo indexes in 8th edition were pretty cheap. In terms of the amount of rules that you got for the money spent, they tended to be on the better value side for Games Workshop, far less pricey than codexes for example, and arguably more rules as they offered rules for lots of different factions in one book. Hopefully they do make the unit data cards meaningfully cheap. I guess they might be kind of similar to Age of Sigmar War Scrolls. I did find it kind of interesting though that this post came literally a day after this one that they sent out via a email newsletter. This one looks like it's normal Games Workshop marketing stuff, maybe designed without any thought for 10th edition in sight, but I feel like this is probably unhelpful in the face of a whole load of books being outdated. Part of the newsletter is basically selling their Age of Sigmar army books plus the Warhammer 40k codexes, saying that basically the first part of getting an army together is to grab a 40k codex and then get your army together, and it doesn't give you any hint here whatsoever that the rules are soon to be outdated. If you click through to the link, then it takes you to the codex section of the web store. Again, if you click into any of those, again there's no hints that these books are going to have a spectacularly short shelf life. I feel like between these two things, it's definitely got the possibility to mislead for people who just don't follow Warhammer community particularly well, or are maybe looking to get into Warhammer and aren't following all the gossip about new editions and things. Realistically, I suspect not that many people would be misled by this, but it seems kind of impossible that a few people wouldn't be. I just feel like at this stage adding something like a bit of a disclaimer at the bottom of the Codex books saying that these books will be outdated by 10th edition, though they still have some interesting stuff in terms of lore and miniature galleries and stuff. That would probably be a good idea and might well save Games Workshop some customer service headaches when people aren't happy with what they've bought. To be fair to them, Games Workshop customer service does tend to be pretty good on the whole. You can return everything that you bought for free, and sometimes they even go a bit above and beyond what you necessarily expect of an online seller, such as when they issued that FAQ for all the Votan rules day one, and some people decided to return their boxes out of annoyance at Games Workshop flip-flopping like that. There were reports of some open boxes being returned and the return being honoured, given Games Workshop had changed some of the rules quite so quick. I feel like a hard rules reset like this is pretty much always going to feel at least a bit controversial given how expensive codexes are. The books really are quite pricey at £32.50 or $55. That can be really quite a big commitment for plenty of people with really quite strained budgets at the moment, and it certainly feels like it's got the opportunity to anger or alienate people, particularly who buy one of these books and then it goes out of date really quickly. From the transition from 8th to 9th, the Space Marines and Sisters codexes I remember being particularly good examples of things that went out of date fast. Codex Space Marines in late 8th edition went out of date in around about a year when 9th edition started, and the Sisters of Battle Launch Codex that came out in late 8th, again that was also superseded around about a year later. It does seem that things might be dialed up to the next level though, in terms of codexes going out of date quickly with this one. The two biggest losers of 9th edition are going to be World Eaters and the Astra Militarum. The World Eaters Codex went on sale in February, and the Astra Militarum main codex only actually went on general sale in January 2023, even though you could have got your hands on it the month before in the preview box. If you buy these when they go on general sale, then it looks like these two books had a lifespan of around about 5 months. They have already announced 10th edition, and that pretty much guarantees that it's not too far in the future. Between their rumours and their other previous editions, it looks like we can expect 10th edition around about late June or early July, sometime around then. And that would put these books at having a roughly 5 months rules life cycle, and that's just incredibly spectacularly short, even by Games Workshop standards. It's not really too hard to see why some people buying these might be a bit on the unhappy side. I know Games Workshop say they're updating them for free and everything, but it still doesn't change the fact that the book that you bought only has a sub 6 months shelf life. If you don't get to play many games in this period, you may as well not have bought it in the first place, and just have waited for the free indexes that were coming anyway. I feel like with their recent releases, Games Workshop have been starting to recognise this somewhat, though even with making a few things that I think are quite sensible, it still doesn't change the fact that these two codexes are about as bad examples of outdated rules as they ever have done. I guess it's the combination of their fairly frenetic release schedule, with the first time that that's been combined with a full edition reset. Back in 7th edition, codexes didn't tend to come out quite as regularly as this, so arguably the hard reset didn't hit codexes quite as hard. I guess the positives of what they've done is that they don't have any codexes releasing in the 5 months prior to 10th at the very least, and I guess that no match play rules in Arcs of Omen thing that they did, that was probably at least partly motivated by 10th edition release. If they had had some 9th edition rules in Farsight, Vashtor, or the Lion Book, all of those would have been outdated even faster than World Eaters. It might be also one of the reasons that they seem to be gradually embracing digital rules more and more. Throughout 9th edition, they've been doing points cost digitally finally, and that has been a big help. Both getting them for free and also not having to have them written 6 months in advance are both really good things. I feel that it's likely that they'll keep that up in 10th. They seem to be doing it a bit more with datasheets for things that might be outmoded soon, say for example Vashtor getting his rules as a digital download, compared with say the Bellicor release where his datasheet came out in a campaign book that Games Workshop expected you to pay a lot of money for. It looks like their digital indexes are perhaps a continuation of that policy. This one looks a bit forward thinking to me in terms of rules obsolescence, as unlike the indexes in 8th edition, people won't feel so bad if these indexes get overwritten by a codex, because you didn't have to pay Games Workshop for the privilege of the rules in the first place, even if the index books were fairly cheap. Hopefully all of this shows that Games Workshop is doing just a little bit better against making their own books obsolete, so fingers crossed they won't pull a World Eaters or Guard Codex reset like this again at any time near in the future. Let me know what you make of this though, particularly if you're a World Eaters or Astra Militarum player who's picked up their codex in the recent past. Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video and you'd like to keep up with Games Workshop's news and rumours throughout 10th edition, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular videos coming just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description. The Patreon page is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite so regularly as my main thing. If you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated with keeping them coming. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.